The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the message on my phone. Sorry, sis. Money's tight, and we can't help with the medical bills. You should have been more careful driving in the rain. Mom and Dad agree. You are on your own with this one. My sister Olivia, who lived in our parents' fully paid guest house and drove a Mercedes they'd gifted her for Christmas, was telling me I was on my own. The same sister whose college tuition I'd helped pay when our parents' investments took a hit in 2008. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the constant beeping of monitors and the throbbing pain in my legs. The doctors said I was lucky. The truck that hit me could have killed me. Instead, I was looking at months of rehabilitation and medical bills that would drain every penny I'd saved. Miss Porter? A nurse poked her head in. Your physical therapy session starts in 10 minutes. Do you have someone coming to help you get there? I shook my head, fighting back tears. My family lived less than 20 minutes away, but they hadn't visited once in the 2 weeks since the accident. The nurse's face softened with sympathy. Don't worry, honey. I'll help you. As she helped me into the wheelchair, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with my parents. It was at Olivia's 32nd birthday party, held at their sprawling Victorian house that had been in our family for generations. They'd been bragging about Olivia's new job at a prestigious law firm, a position she'd gotten through Dad's golf club connections. Catherine, Mom had said, sipping her champagne, when are you going to get a real career? This financial consulting business of yours. It's not very stable, is it? If only they knew that my unstable consulting business had helped me build a substantial investment portfolio. I'd kept my success quiet, remembering how they'd ridiculed my decision to strike out on my own, rather than join Dad's firm. The physical therapy session was grueling. Every movement sent shots of pain through my damaged legs, but I gritted my teeth and pushed through. The therapist, Mike, was encouraging but realistic. You're doing great, Catherine, but recovery will take time. And it's important to have a support system. I have enough savings. I cut him off. I'll hire whatever help I need. Back in my room, I opened my laptop, determined to at least review some client files. A news alert caught my eye. Morton Financial, my parents' primary investment firm, was facing a liquidity crisis. Their stock had plummeted 60% in a week. I dug deeper, my analyst instincts kicking in. Morton had made risky bets on the real estate market, leveraging their clients' portfolios to buy up distressed properties. Now those investments were imploding. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Only did you see the news about Morton? Mom and Dad are freaking out. They might have to sell the house. I set the phone down without responding. The Victorian house had been our grandfather's pride and joy. He'd built the family's wealth from nothing, but always warned us about the dangers of entitlement. Money shouldn't change who you are, he used to say. It just reveals it. How right he'd been. Another message popped up, this time from my best friend and fellow analyst. David, check your email. Found something interesting about Morton's debt structure. I opened his email and started reading. My eyes widened as I absorbed the implications. Morton's mortgage division had been bundling their loans and selling them to private equity firms at a discount. Among their portfolio was my family's house, the mortgage they'd taken out to fund Olivia's law school, and their lavish lifestyle. A plan began forming in my mind. I might be stuck in this hospital bed, but my brain worked just fine, and I knew exactly how to use that Morton financial crisis to my advantage. David, I typed, remember that investment fund we discussed starting. I think it's time. and I know exactly what assets we should acquire first. I looked out my hospital window at the setting sun, a grim smile playing on my lips. My family thought I was helpless, a burden they could discard. They had no idea that while I lay here, allegedly broken and abandoned, I was about to become their worst nightmare. My fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard as I outlined my strategy to David. Morton would be desperate to offload their toxic assets. With the right structure and timing, we could acquire their entire mortgage portfolio for pennies on the dollar, including the mortgage on my family's precious Victorian. A nurse came in to check my vitals. "Your blood pressure's a bit high," she noted with concern. "Try to rest." "I will," I assured her. "I just need to finish something important." On my screen, David's reply appeared. "You're sure about this? It's aggressive." I thought about my sister's dismissive text, my parents' absence, the cold calculation with which they'd abandoned me in my hour of need. "I'm sure," I typed back. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about taking control. I closed my laptop and leaned back against the hospital pillows, finally feeling something other than pain and betrayal. I felt powerful. The next morning, I had David bring me every document he could find on Morton Financial's assets. Between physical therapy sessions and doctor's visits, I pored over financial statements, loan documents, and market analyses. Morton's desperation was evident in the numbers. They needed to raise capital fast, and they were willing to sell their loan portfolios at steep discounts to do it. I called in every favor, contacted every industry connection I'd made over the years. My hospital room became my war room, with David acting as my eyes and ears in the financial world. Morton's starting to approach potential buyers. He reported during one of his daily visits. "They're trying to keep it quiet, but word's getting out." I nodded, scrolling through the latest projections on my laptop. "Have our LLC ready. Everything needs to be in place when they start accepting bids." "Catherine," David hesitated, "your family, they still haven't visited?" "No," I said shortly, "and soon they'll wish they had." My phone lit up with another text from Olivia. "Dad's talking about declaring bankruptcy. This is a nightmare." I left it unanswered, just like all her previous messages. Instead, I focused on the document David had brought me, a preliminary term sheet for Morton's distressed asset sale. The pieces were falling into place. While my family worried about losing their precious house, I was preparing to become their anonymous creditor. Sometimes recovery takes more than just physical healing. Sometimes it requires rebuilding yourself into someone stronger, someone who can never be abandoned or betrayed again. And as I lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by financial documents and powered by determination, I was doing exactly that. 2 months after the accident, I sat in my wheelchair in a sleek downtown office, watching as David finalized our bid for Morton Financial's distressed assets. My legs were healing, but my heart had hardened into something unbreakable. "Phoenix Capital Management," I murmured, reading the name on our newly registered investment firm's documents. Rising from the ashes, David looked up from his computer. "Final offers ready. $85 million for their entire mortgage portfolio. About 30 cents on the dollar." I nodded, remembering the conversation I'd overheard between 2 nurses last week. They'd been discussing my sister Olivia's appearance on local news, speaking as a concerned citizen about Morton Financial's collapse. She'd been wearing the diamond necklace our parents gave her for passing the bar exam. The same week they told me they couldn't help with my student loans. "Send it," I said. While we waited for Morton's response, I focused on my recovery. Physical therapy was still excruciating, but I channeled every stab of pain into determination. The doctors were amazed by my progress. "Whatever's driving you," Mike, my therapist, said during one particularly tough session, "it's working." If he only knew. The call from Morton came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. They accepted our bid with minimal negotiation. Desperation had made them eager. Within hours, Phoenix Capital Management became the proud owner of over 500 mortgages, including the one on my family's Victorian. I celebrated that night with a painkiller and a spreadsheet, meticulously reviewing each loan in our newly acquired portfolio. Most would be restructured or sold off, but some would receive special attention. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Morton had announced the sale of their mortgage division to an anonymous investment firm. My family was panicking. "Mom, they sold our mortgage. What if the new company raises our rates? Olivia, Dad's meeting with bankruptcy lawyers tomorrow. This is insane. Dad, Catherine, I know we haven't been there for you, but I need your financial expertise. Call me." I deleted them all without responding. David stopped by later with takeout and updates. "The transfer's complete. You now officially own your family's debt." I took a bite of lo mein, savoring both the taste and the moment. Had our management company send out the standard notification letters. And David, make sure my family's includes the new, adjusted terms. "You're really going to do it? They made their choice when they abandoned me," I said, my voice steady. "Now it's my turn to make mine." The next week, as I graduated from wheelchair to walker, my family received their letter from Phoenix Capital Management. Their mortgage rate was being adjusted to the maximum legally allowable amount, effectively doubling their monthly payment. The explosion was immediate. "Catherine," Olivia burst into my hospital room unannounced, waving the letter. "You have to help us figure this out. Mom's having anxiety attacks. Dad can't sleep." I looked at her designer purse, her perfect manicure, her face flushed with self-righteous concern. "I thought I wasn't your problem." She flinched. "That's not fair. We were dealing with our own crisis." While I was dealing with paralysis, I cut in. "Alone." "We're family," she protested. "Are we? Because family doesn't abandon each other in hospitals. Family doesn't ignore calls for help. Family shows up." Tears welled in her eyes. "What happened to you? You change." I smiled coldly. "No, I just stopped accepting less than I deserve." After she left, I had David send another letter to my parents. This one detailed Phoenix's new policy on late payments. There would be no grace period, no exceptions. That evening, my father called. "Catherine, please. We need your help understanding these financial terms. Maybe you could talk to the new company, explain our situation, like you explained my situation to them when I needed help." Silence. Then, "We made a mistake. We see that now." "No," I said quietly. "You're only seeing your own desperation. There's a difference." I hung up and opened my laptop, reviewing Phoenix's latest acquisitions. We'd expanded beyond Morton's portfolio, snapping up distressed debt across the city. Every deal made us stronger, more influential. The physical therapist had me practicing with a cane now. Each step was a victory, a reminder that I wasn't the helpless victim my family had abandoned. "Your recovery is remarkable," Dr. Chin said during my checkup. "Most patients take much longer to reach this stage." I didn't tell her that rage could be as powerful a motivator as physical therapy. The next day, David brought more news. My parents had tried to refinance their mortgage. approaching every bank in town. They were denied, he reported. Their credits shot from the Morton collapse. I nodded, unsurprised. And the house? They've listed it for sale. No takers yet. The Victorian had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandfather had bought it with his first real estate profits, turning it from a rundown property into a symbol of success. Now it would become a symbol of something else, the price of betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. We're having a family meeting tonight about the house. Please come. We need you. I stared at the message, remembering all the unanswered calls I'd made from my hospital bed, all the nights I'd laid awake, fighting pain and loneliness, while they lived their lives as if I didn't exist. Can't make it, I texted back. I have a meeting with my investment advisors. Let them wonder about that. Let them speculate about my finances while their own crumbled, because soon they would learn just how expensive abandonment could be. That night, I sat in my apartment. I checked out of the hospital last week, looking at old family photos. Happy faces smiled back at me, preserving moments when I'd believed in unconditional love and family loyalty. You were right, Grandpa, I whispered to his image. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them. My laptop chimed with an email notification. David had sent the latest report on Phoenix Holdings. Our company had grown exponentially, attracting attention from major players in the finance world. But I wasn't interested in their attention. I was focused on one particular asset, a Victorian house that would soon teach my family the true meaning of consequences. 3 months after Phoenix Capital acquired my family's mortgage, I stood without assistance in my office on the 40th floor of downtown's most prestigious building, looking out at the city below. My cane rested against the desk, rarely needed now, except on particularly tiring days. My phone buzzed, a text from David. They're here. I smoothed my designer suit, a small smile playing on my lips. Send them up. Minutes later, my family walked into my office. Their shocked expressions as they took in the luxurious space, the stunning view, and my position behind the massive desk were almost worth every painful step of my recovery. Catherine? Mom's voice wavered. This is your office. Welcome to Phoenix Capital Management, I said calmly. Please, sit down. They sank into the leather chairs facing my desk. Dad looked older than I remembered, his face lined with worry. Olivia had lost her polished shine, her designer clothes replaced by something more modest. Mom's hands trembled as she clutched her purse. You work here? Olivia asked, her eyes darting around the office. As what? Not exactly. I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall behind me lit up with the Phoenix Capital logo. I own it. The silence that followed was deafening. That's impossible, Dad finally managed. Phoenix Capital is the company that bought our mortgage. They're worth hundreds of millions. The latest valuation puts us at just over $1 billion. I kept my voice professionally detached. Would you like to see the paperwork? Mom started crying. Not the elegant tears she shed at charity galas, but ugly, racking sobs. All this time, while we were drowning in debt. You were successful? I finished for her. Yes, no thanks to any of you. Why didn't you tell us? Olivia demanded. Why did you let us suffer? I leaned forward, my hands flat on the desk. Let you suffer? Like you let me suffer in that hospital, alone in pain, wondering why my family hadn't bothered to visit. We were dealing with our own crisis. Dad protested weakly. No, I cut him off. You were dealing with the consequences of your own choices. The risky investments, the lavish spending, the constant need to maintain appearances. And when I needed you most, you decided I wasn't worth the inconvenience. I pulled out a folder and laid 3 documents on the desk. Option 1. I foreclose on the house immediately. You have 30 days to vacate. Dad's face went pale. Option 2. You keep the house, but with the current terms. Double payments, no grace period, no exceptions. Mom's sobs grew louder. Option 3. I slid the final document forward. You sign the house over to me. I let you stay as tenants, with reasonable rent, but you acknowledge that you've lost any claim to our grandfather's legacy. You're enjoying this, Olivia accused, her voice bitter. You're punishing us. No, I said quietly. I'm teaching you what it feels like to be abandoned by family. I stood up, walking to the window without my cane. You know what got me through those weeks in the hospital. Not the pain medication, not the physical therapy. It was understanding that I had to become someone who could never be hurt like that again. Catherine, please. Mom whispered. We're sorry. We were wrong. Sorry because you mean it, or sorry because I hold your fate in my hands? No one answered. I turned back to face them. You have 24 hours to decide. Choose wisely. After they left, David came in. You okay? I nodded, watching their car pull away 40 stories below. Have the papers ready for whatever they choose. And if they go public, try to challenge your ownership. Then I released the documents showing how they mismanaged Brandpost Trust, how they used Olivia's law school as an excuse to mortgage a fully paid house, how they chose luxury over family. The next day, exactly 23 hours later, they returned with the signed option 3 documents. No one spoke as I reviewed the paperwork, my signature joining theirs in crisp black ink. The rental agreement will arrive tomorrow, I said, closing the folder. I suggest you read it carefully. Is this it? Olivia asked, her voice small. Are we just done as a family? I met her eyes, seeing for the first time how much the past months had changed her. The entitlement was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like understanding. Family, I said softly, isn't about shared DNA or shared property. It's about being there when it matters most. You taught me that. And there's no going back. Mom's question carried all the weight of her regret. I thought about the lonely hospital nights, the unanswered calls, the casual cruelty of their abandonment. Then I thought about Grandpa's words about money revealing true character. Going back? No, but forward. That depends on you. They left quietly, the victory I'd imagined feeling more hollow than I'd expected. But as I watched the sun set over the city, I knew I'd done what was necessary, not for revenge, but for justice. Not to hurt them, but to teach them. Money hadn't changed me. It had revealed me, revealed a strength I never knew I had. 1 year later, I stood in front of the Victorian, its restored grandeur a testament to the renovations I'd overseen. My family still lived there, paying their rent on time, learning slowly what it meant to live within their means. Olivia had quit her prestigious law firm to work at a nonprofit. Mom had started volunteering at the hospital where I'd recovered. Dad had finally retired, spending his days restoring classic cars instead of chasing status. They weren't perfect. Our relationship wasn't healed. But they were changing, and maybe that was enough. Miss Porter? My assistant's voice came through my phone. Your 3 o'clock is waiting. The investors are very interested in Phoenix expansion plans. On my way, I replied, taking one last look at the house. I didn't need the cane anymore. My legs had healed stronger than before, and so had I. As I drove away, I thought about how life's worst moments can become our greatest teachers. My family had abandoned me, but in doing so, they'd forced me to become unbreakable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about becoming someone who can never be broken again. And I had succeeded at both. I stood in front of the ornate church mirror, adjusting my maid of honor dress and mentally calculating the exact amount my parents had stolen from my savings account. $127,843. Money I'd earned through years of careful investment and countless late nights building my consulting business. Isn't this perfect? My sister Madison twirled in her designer wedding gown, the one that cost exactly $23,651 of my money. I still can't believe how everything worked out. Meeting James at that charity gala, and now here we are. I forced a smile, remembering the real story of how she'd met my business partner. The story she didn't know. Yes, I replied softly. Everything worked out exactly as planned. 6 months earlier, I'd sat across from my parents at our family's weekly dinner, listening in shock as they casually announced they'd borrowed my savings for Madison's wedding. "Honey, you understand," Mom had said, patting my hand. "Your sister only gets married once, and James comes from such a good family. We couldn't let her have anything less than perfect. You had no right." I'd managed through clenched teeth. "That was my money." "Don't be selfish," Dad cut in. "Madison needs this. Besides, what were you doing with all that money anyway? It's not like you have anything important to spend it on." I'd looked at Madison, waiting for her to say something, anything. But she just sat there, examining her fresh manicure, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. What they didn't know was that those savings had been earmarked for a crucial business expansion. I'd been planning to buy out our biggest competitor, a deal that would have doubled our market share overnight. "I can't believe you're being so dramatic about this," Madison had sighed. "It's not like you have a wedding to save for. When was your last date anyway?" That night, I'd called James, my business partner, and the only person who knew the full extent of my family's emotional manipulation. "They took everything, James. The expansion money, my emergency fund, all of it." His voice had been calm, measured. "I might have a solution, but you'll have to trust me completely, and it's going to take time." "I trust you," I'd said without hesitation. James and I had built our company from nothing, working 80-hour weeks, surviving on coffee and determination. He was the brother I should have had instead of the sister who'd spent her life taking everything from me. "Good," he replied, "because I'm about to tell you how we're going to take over your family's company, and it starts with me meeting your sister." Now, watching Madison fuss with her veil, I thought about how perfectly James had played his part. The accidental meeting at the charity gala, the whirlwind romance, the proposal that had made headline news. James was, after all, one of the city's most eligible bachelors. My parents had been ecstatic. Their golden child marrying into serious money. It was everything they dreamed of. If only they knew that James's real value wasn't in his personal wealth, but in his shares of our company, Monarch Consulting. Shares that, combined with mine, would give us controlling interest in Anderson and Sons, my family's century-old business, once the merger papers were signed tomorrow morning. "Sarah?" Madison's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Earth to Sarah. "Mom wants to know if you've got the marriage license. She said she gave it to you for safekeeping." I patted my purse, feeling the weight of the envelope inside. "Got it right here." What I didn't mention was that nestled beside it was another envelope, one containing merger documents that would transfer control of Anderson and Sons to Monarch Consulting the moment Madison and James said, "I do." A knock at the door interrupted us. Mom bustled in, already dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Oh, my beautiful girls." She hugged Madison carefully, mindful of the expensive dress. Then she turned to me, her smile faltering slightly. "Sarah, dear, couldn't you have done something more with your hair? This is your sister's big day." I touched my elegant chignon, the one that had cost $200 at the best salon in town. "It's fine, Mom." "Well, at least you're not completely overshadowing your sister's moment," she sighed. "Though that dress is a bit much, don't you think?" I glanced down at the designer gown I'd chosen specifically because it was more expensive than Madison's. A small petty revenge, but satisfying nonetheless. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes, Mom continued. "Sarah, please try not to trip during the procession. And remember to smile. None of those serious business expressions you always wear." After she left, Madison turned to me, her face suddenly serious. "You are happy for me, aren't you, Sarah? I know you and James work together, and maybe you had a little crush on him." I cut her off with a laugh. "Trust me, Madison. James is exactly where he's supposed to be." My phone buzzed. A text from James. "Everything ready?" "All set," I replied. "See you at the altar." Madison was fixing her makeup one last time when Dad came in. "Princess, it's time." He turned to me. "Sarah, don't forget your part. Simple and dignified, remember?" I nodded, thinking of the other role I'd be playing today, the one that would change everything. As the wedding coordinator lined us up, I felt the weight of both envelopes in my purse. One would make my sister Mrs. James Porter. The other would make me CEO of Anderson and Sons. The organ music began, its triumphant notes filling the massive church. I stepped into line behind the bridesmaids, a small smile playing on my lips. "Ready?" the coordinator whispered. More than ready. I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. The doors opened, and I began my walk down the aisle, past hundreds of guests who had no idea they were about to witness not just a wedding, but a corporate takeover. At the altar, James stood tall and handsome in his tuxedo. He caught my eye and gave me the slightest of nods. Showtime. The ceremony proceeded like a perfectly choreographed dance. Madison floated down the aisle on Dad's arm, guests murmuring appreciatively at her designer gown. In the front row, Mom dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief, the massive diamond rings on her fingers catching the light. Rings bought with profits from the company I was about to take over. When the minister asked for the marriage license, I opened my purse with steady hands. For a moment, I held both envelopes, one containing the license, the other holding the merger documents James had already signed. One would bind my sister in marriage, the other would bind my family's company to mine. I handed over the marriage license, keeping the merger papers close. Their time would come soon enough. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, his voice echoing through the church. I watched James's face as he recited his vows, admiring how perfectly he played his role. Not a single person in the cathedral suspected that this wealthy, charming man was about to help me orchestrate the biggest business coup in our city's history. "I do," Madison said, her voice trembling with emotion. If only she knew what those words would really set in motion. As James slipped the platinum band onto Madison's finger, I felt my phone vibrate silently in my purse. Right on schedule, our lawyers confirming that everything was in place. At the reception, I stood to deliver my maid of honor speech. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with expensive decorations, all paid for with my stolen savings. When Madison first met James, I began, my voice carrying across the perfectly arranged tables. She thought she was the luckiest girl in the world. I paused, letting my eyes meet James's. Little did she know just how special their connection would truly be. The crowd chuckled, interpreting my words as sisterly affection. Only James understood their real meaning. As I sat down, Dad stood up, champagne glass in hand. Today isn't just about joining two people in marriage, he'd announced proudly. It's about joining two of the city's most prestigious families, the Andersons and the Porters, a perfect match. I smiled, thinking about how that perfect match would look very different by tomorrow morning. The party was in full swing when my phone buzzed again. The message was from our corporate attorney. Documents filed. Ready when you are. I caught James's eye across the dance floor and gave a subtle nod. He excused himself from Madison's side and made his way to where the senior partners of Anderson and Sons were gathered. "Gentlemen," I heard him say, "I'd love your advice on something. Could we step into the library for a moment?" I watched them follow him out. These men who had spent years dismissing me despite my Harvard MBA and proven track record. These men who had supported my father's decision to make Madison a vice president straight out of college while I built my own company from scratch. 20 minutes later, I entered the library to find exactly what I expected, a room full of pale-faced men holding copies of the merger documents. This is impossible." My father's voice shook as he looked up from the papers. "James, what is this?" "That," I said, stepping forward, "is a legally binding merger agreement between Monarch Consulting and Anderson and Sons. One that gives us controlling interest in your company. But you don't have the authority," one of the partners sputtered. "The shareholder agreement clearly states that any marriage between the families automatically triggers the merger clause," James finished smoothly. "A clause your lawyers insisted on when they learned of my family's wealth. They just didn't know I was already Sarah's business partner." Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You planned this? Both of you?" "Consider it karma," I said coolly. "You took my savings. I'm taking your company." "Madison will never forgive you," he threatened. "Madison will never know," I corrected him, "unless you want to explain to her how you stole her sister's money to pay for her wedding. How you've been embezzling from the company pension fund to maintain your lifestyle." "Oh, yes," I added, seeing his expression. "We found those records too." The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of the reception. "The papers are already filed," James said quietly. "The only question is whether you want to handle this transition quietly or make a scene at your daughter's wedding." Dad's hands clenched into fists. "Sarah, please. We can work something out." "Like how you worked out taking my savings?" I asked sweetly. "No, Dad. This is happening. The only choice you have is how public you want this to become." One of the partners cleared his throat. "Robert, maybe we should discuss this calmly. If what they're saying about the pension fund..." Dad's shoulders slumped in defeat. James gathered the signed documents while I stood by the door, watching these powerful men come to terms with their new reality. "Oh, and Dad," I said as they filed out, "don't worry about paying me back for the wedding. Consider it a gift, the last one you'll ever get from me." Back in the ballroom, Madison was cutting the massive wedding cake, beaming at the cameras. Mom was showing off the table settings to her friends, bragging about the cost. If they only knew that every crystal glass, every flower arrangement, every perfect detail of this wedding had helped fund their own downfall. I picked up a champagne flute and watched the bubbles rise. By this time tomorrow, I would be CEO of both companies. The empire my grandfather built, that my father nearly destroyed, would be mine. Everything okay? James appeared at my side, his bow tie slightly crooked from the confrontation. Perfect, I replied, straightening his tie. Ready for your honeymoon? He grimaced slightly. 2 weeks in the Maldives with Madison. The things I do for our company. Just think of it as a business investment, I said, raising my glass. To new beginnings. Across the room, Dad was drinking heavily at the bar, his face ashen. Mom was still circulating among the guests, unaware that her world had just shifted on its axis. And Madison? She was exactly where she'd always been, the center of attention, basking in her perfect moment, completely oblivious to the storm about to break. The night was still young, but the real celebration was just beginning. 2 weeks after the wedding, I sat in what had once been my father's office, reviewing the latest financial reports. The view of the city skyline was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits, but everything else had changed. The heavy oak desk where Dad had once dismissed my business ideas was now mine. The wall of photos showing him with celebrities and politicians had been replaced with our company's new vision statement and organizational chart. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Just landed. Heading to the office. Madison's still mad. I'm cutting the honeymoon short for work. I smiled, remembering Madison's Instagram posts from the Maldives. Endless selfies of her living her best life. Completely unaware that her new husband had spent most of the trip on conference calls, helping me restructure both companies. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Come in. Mom entered, looking smaller somehow without her usual designer outfit and perfectly coiffed hair. Sarah, we need to talk. I gestured to the chair across from me. The same chair where I'd once sat as Dad lectured me about practical career choices. How could you do this to your own family? She demanded, but her voice lacked its usual authority. Interesting, I said, opening a folder on my desk. That's exactly what I wondered when I saw these bank statements. Care to explain why you and Dad withdrew $127,843 from my account without permission? That was different. It was for your sister's wedding. No, I corrected her calmly. It was theft. Just like Dad's creative accounting with the pension fund was theft. The only difference is, I found a legal way to take back what's mine. By tricking your sister, using James to what? Give her exactly what she wanted. A wealthy husband, a dream wedding, a luxury honeymoon. I leaned forward. Madison got everything she ever wanted. The fact that it helped me get what I wanted to is just good business. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Your father hasn't slept in days. He's talking about moving to Florida, selling the house. The house is company property, I reminded her. And yes, you'll need to vacate it by the end of the month. Where are we supposed to go? I hear Madison's guest house is quite comfortable, though you might want to hurry. Once she learns about the company, she might not be feeling very generous. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Madison. Excuse me, I told Mom. I need to take this. Mom stood shakily. At the door, she turned back. We're still family, Sarah. No, I said softly. We stopped being family the moment you chose Madison's one perfect day over my entire future. I answered Madison's call on speaker, letting Mom hear as she left. "Sarah." Madison's voice was shrill. "What's going on?" "James is acting weird, saying something about an emergency board meeting. And Dad's not answering his phone." "Don't worry," I said smoothly. "Everything will be explained at the meeting. You should come too. It involves the whole family." 2 hours later, I stood at the head of the conference room table, facing my assembled family and the board of directors. James sat to my right, his expression professionally neutral. "As of this morning," I announced, "the merger between Monarch Consulting and Anderson & Sons is complete. I will be serving as CEO of the combined companies." Madison jumped up. "What? But Daddy, you said I was next in line for CEO." Dad couldn't meet her eyes. James cleared his throat. "Actually, according to the new organizational structure, your position has been eliminated." The color drained from Madison's face as understanding dawned. You married me just to help her take over the company." "The marriage is legal," James said calmly. "And I'll continue to provide for you exactly as agreed in our prenup," which, if you recall, you were too excited to read carefully. Madison turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "My own sister. You ruined everything." "No," I corrected her. "I took back what was mine and built something bigger in the process." "By destroying our family?" I pulled out the bank statements, sliding them across the table. "Our family was destroyed the moment they stole my savings for your wedding. I just decided to stop being the victim and start being the victor." "Mr. Anderson," one of the board members interrupted, "given the circumstances with the pension fund, we believe it's best if you announce your retirement immediately." Dad nodded numbly. Madison looked between our parents in confusion. "Pension fund? What pension fund?" "Ask them," I suggested. "Ask them about all the creative accounting they did to maintain their lifestyle, to pay for your cars, your clothes, your perfect wedding." The board members began filing out, leaving our family alone in the wreckage of what we'd once been. "You'll regret this," Madison spat, grabbing her designer purse. "All of it." "Actually," I said, "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." After they left, James loosened his tie. Well, that went about as expected. I stood by the window, watching my family exit the building below. Mom and Dad walking slowly, shoulders slumped. Madison storming ahead, already on her phone, probably calling her friends to complain about her evil sister. "Any regrets?" James asked quietly. I thought about years of being second best, of working twice as hard for half the recognition, of having my dreams dismissed and my savings stolen. "Just one," I replied. "That I didn't do this sooner." 1 year later, I stood in the same spot, but the view was different. Under my leadership, the merged company had doubled its market share. The pension fund had been fully restored, the corporate culture transformed. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Heard about the company's success. Ready to talk?" I deleted it without responding. Some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt. James appeared in my doorway. "Board meeting in 5. Ready to show them the expansion plans?" I gathered my papers, pausing to straighten a new photo on my wall. One showing me and James at the company's last charity gala. Both of us smiling genuinely at the camera. "You know what, James? I've never been more ready. Sometimes revenge isn't just about getting even. Sometimes it's about proving that the people who underestimated you were wrong. That the person they dismissed as second best could become the best. And I had proof. 12 stories of prime real estate, 2 thriving companies merged into an empire, and one perfect revenge served exactly the way I'd planned it. Madison got her perfect wedding. I got everything else. And that was the best revenge of all.